What's going on, everybody? This is Professor Figueroa for Office Hour on 9/2/2021. It's 11:01 a.m. I'm going to get started with a few things today. We do have some members of the audience. Members of the audience, just to let you know that you, for quality assurance purposes, you are being, since this is a live recording, you guys are going to be recorded as well. If you do talk, don't be bashful. That's just kind of the way that it goes. Feel free to ask your questions if you feel like asking questions. There's a few things that I need to go through today. I need to talk a little bit more about the geometry brushes, aka the BSPs. They are both the same thing. And barring for time, I'm going to go ahead and probably put together a little scene so that everybody gets an idea of how to just kind of put it together. We're not expecting a whole lot here. It's just kind of reinforcing what we did in the first class. I'm also going to talk about how to get the starter content in the scene once the starter content is, well, if you start a project without the starter content. Epic likes starting things with the starter content in it, but sometimes students either forget or they clicked it off, or if you're using U4, it didn't get put in. So I will show how to navigate and how to put that in and how to install the extra features and content packs. I think I covered it in like a video that was about 10 seconds in length where I said where to do it as opposed to actually showing it. I'll go ahead and do that. And I am also going to cover how to import and prepare a mesh in Maya for export into UE4, UE5. All right. And if there's any other questions, I'm going to go over the classroom stuff. Oh, just as a quick announcement, because of how many people have had to PM me questions and whatnot, I am extending the due date. Well, due dates are kind of nebulous anyway. I am extending the quote-unquote due date of the Grand Space until Thursday at midnight. So for those of you who are very lost, or those of you who need more time or have more questions about just building out in UE4, UE5, we have another class together. Yes, there's other things that I'm going to cover as well, but that gives us time to kind of go over some more things. And there is another office hour that you could benefit from before before the assignment is actually due. And if there's anything else that needs to be done to make sure that everybody's on the same page, I'm going to make sure to do that. So let's go ahead and start off with UE5 here. So I'm going to go ahead and get launched. And say hi. If you have any questions, interrupt me, please. I'm not going to do anything to like tell you no. Like, this is for you guys, but I'm answering the questions that were PM'd or posted just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Go ahead. There will be some the due date is extended for the assignment, but the other assignments are going to be made live at the same time. It's really about making sure that people who want to have a little bit of extra time on a particular assignment can. For everyone else, depending on if people ask for it, I'll probably extend just the due date is extended into the week. But the other assignments still need to be kind of done. The next week's assignment is lighting. It's pretty short. It's just a matter of we'll build a scene together and then we'll light it and then we'll experiment with lighting. It shouldn't take too long. This is just something that it seems that people are having more trouble with. But the due dates will be are flexible. If people are having trouble, I'll push it out. But generally, it'll still be a week. Where am I? Oh, Epic Games Launcher. Yes, there is a way to launch the engine without the launcher. It used to be down here. If the launcher doesn't load, it can be annoying. That's how you do it right there. Otherwise, you can navigate to the actual Unreal Engine file and launch it, but I'll show that in a later demo. All right, let's go ahead and launch Early Access here. Okay, let me double check to make sure my recording is still running. Okay. Okay, I'm disabling my preview to make sure that I get good performance here. Alright, so like a lot of you folks, let's say, as you can see, if you're using UE5, by default the starter content is going to be clicked on. I'm going to click it off. And let's say I wanted to make a project, but I wanted the third person template so that I can get third person character. But let's say I've had a long day, I was tired, I was at work, as probably a lot of you guys are. Delete office hour. So I'm just going to make a blank project with no starter content, desktop maximum, and I'm just going to hit create. Now the for UE4 guys, it is an explicit box that asks for starter content. Sometimes you may or may not accidentally click it and have it, working. All right, there we go. Give that a sec to kind of do its thing. Now, because my machine is going to be recording kind of slow because of Lumen, I have to go into the project settings and disable Lumen. So again, this is for about half of you, from what I can tell, can run the engine just fine, and half of you can't. So that's fine. Yes, I'm going to update the project. Sorry. I'm going to disable Lumen, and I'm going to disable the virtual shadow maps, and that should give me back all the speed that I need. Okay, cool. All right. So we have a project, and we want to add some. Oh no, where is everything? Well, this is an easy fix. A lot of students are like, oh, I'm just going to make a new project. You don't have to. Everything that enters the Unreal Engine can enter the engine through the add button. Now, you can add things by dragging and dropping things into the content folder in Windows. But I warn people against that, generally because, at least new people, because sometimes Epic and Unreal Engine don't read files that are dragged in manually unless they are formatted already for the engine. And I'll show that probably at the end of today. So let's say, watch what happens if I hit play here. If I hit play, I'm actually in fly mode because there is no play mode. It's not loaded in. We don't have a third person. We don't even have a character. We have a content folder and it's empty. Let's go ahead, and this is the same for UE4 and UE5. We're going to go to add, and up here there is a tool that lets us add feature or content pack. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and if you look under here, we see that we can add the default features, third person, top down, VR, all of these things. Generally speaking, the UE4 project, UE4 will have the ability to start a few more because they are formatted a little bit better for, how can I explain this? They're formatted a little bit better for UE4, not necessarily UE5. This list will expand as UE5 gets started. So let's say you wanted to make a first person. The recommended fix right now is to start a first person project and then import those files in. But generally speaking, if you've made it this far and you don't have the right play mode, you should restart the project and start a first person. But in this particular case, we do have access to a first person here. I don't want to mess too much with the C++ features because we're not going to be doing any C++ programming, at least right away. And we have access to the starter content. Oh, it sounds like my alarm is about to go off. Sorry about that, guys. So let's see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a third person here. And what that does, and I'll close this for now, and I'll bump this open. What that does is that adds my third person folder with the blueprints that makes the character run and the game mode that makes the game kind of hijack the way that this plays. We also have access to things like our maps, so on and so forth. But here is the problem. We added that, and if we hit play, we'll notice that there's no change. Now this is something that I was going to introduce in the blueprint section, but I feel like it might help now. So didn't we not just add another game mode? We did. We added the third person character. Why isn't it working? We actually set it. By default, the engine doesn't automatically switch to it. If you go into Windows and then you open up your world settings, we have the ability to override the game mode. Right now the game mode is set to the game mode base. We can override that by going into here and selecting third person game mode. Once we have that third person game mode set up, we don't even have to save. We automatically are in control. It's that easy. The same goes for adding additional content. So you see that we have some stuff for the third person here. Let's go ahead and go to Add, Feature Content Pack, and let's go to the content packs. Oh hey look, the starter content. Let's go ahead and add that to the project. Now notice that the screen does not go away whenever this finishes. Once this finishes and the loading bar goes away, the best thing to do is just close the window and open up your content drawer. As you can see, the starter content made it into the scene. So it's all there. You guys should at this point be getting pretty good at navigating. You see kind of how I like the fly controls myself because it lets me move things, but I use a combination of the mouse move tools. This is holding left click, this is holding right click, and this is holding down right click and using WASD. I use a combination of F and then Alt rotates and then reposition to get everything that I need in the viewport. You'll get comfortable and really fast at it at one point. But you can see kind of how everything is already there. Okay, let me go ahead and open up the details panel here. Okay, so that kind of shows how to add the content to the scene. The next thing that I do want to talk about, because other people were very curious about it. Now again, once you've added this, before I move on, once you've added the content, it's actually in your folder. You don't actually have to save anything. You can hit save all, but you see that it's just going to try to save my level. And it wants me to save my level. So generally good cleanliness for your files is if you want to save a level, and this level is not part of the saved files, and you can see I didn't start this project with third person or first person content, so there's no default map. If it asks to save a level, I'm going to go ahead and call this maps. I'm going to make a new folder by right clicking the background here, calling it maps, making sure I have maps selected, and then I'm going to call this default something. Call it whatever you'd like. Generally speaking, the nomenclature for Unreal Maps is default underscore MAP. That way, you can always find the difference between your maps and anything that happens. Any other files that are in your scene. So map files are your actual maps. Saving that, we'll bump up in the content drawer and have a look. We see that we have our default map and the build data for the default map that showcases how the lighting and how this registers in Unreal at the Windows level. So we don't have to worry too much about that anymore. Okay. Let me hop into... do I want to make a new level? Hold on. You know what? I'm just going to keep working from this. So let's go ahead and move on to the next part of the question here, and let me make sure I'm answering the correct questions here. Let's see. Okay. So people asked about the starter pack, import objects into Maya. We'll talk about importing objects into Maya real quick. At the very end, I will talk about how to format into Maya. Actually, I wonder if I should just do that right away. You know what? Let's do it this way. Let me cover BSPs real quick. And then we'll go into the full Maya workflow. And then I think that'll cover the biggest questions that people have. I'm going to go ahead and delete my ground here in a sec. But what I want to do is, since I'm going to build kind of a larger space. Actually, yeah, I'm going to build a larger space. I want to make a landscape. You don't have to. If you want to just do the thing where I multiply this 3 by 3 by 3 to make 9 ground squares and build on that, by all means. But if you're going to be making a large environment or making kind of like whatever it is you want, and you want a space to kind of play around with it, I strongly recommend using the landscape tool. You can use the landscape tool by activating the landscape mode in the top bar here. UE4 folks, you'll also have the landscape mode up here. And then without changing anything in the default landscape, just go ahead and hit create. And then once you're done, you can go back to the select editing mode. Now, don't worry about those black lines. If you have black lines in your scene, you don't have to worry too much about that. We can just fix those in a future demo. This is not going to be a tremendous issue to solve. It's a visual bug. We don't have to worry about that. So, because I mentioned this in the last demo, oh, wrong button. The BSP system inside, excuse me, inside of Unreal. Let me give a drink here. Doesn't actually exist in this create panel. So if you're using UE5, which most of you are, you're not going to be able to find the geometry panel in here. You can go ahead and turn on the place actors panel by pressing Alt-P or by opening the create tab and opening up the place actors panel. If you are in UE4, this is going to be open by default. In UE4, you'll see a geometry panel on the left, I believe. But for the UE5 folks, you'll see a geometry panel up here. Don't be fooled. Remember how I talked about how under shapes, for example, these are SMAs or static mesh actors. Static mesh actors at one point had a life as a polygonal object. That's why they are referred to as static mesh actors. If you hold Control and Alt while you're highlighting over these things, it'll open up the documentation. But essentially, a static mesh in UE4 or UE5 is an object that at one point started its life as polygons. These cannot, without the right tools, and this tool isn't loaded by default, I'll show that in a future demo. You can't really edit these. These are simple placeholders, and they allow you some modification if you turn on the plugin. For those of you who are more advanced, and I know a couple of you students are, let me show you where that tool is. However, I don't have a lot of experience in it because it just became super viable in UE5. If we go under, where is it? Where's my plugins? There it is. If we go under Edit, Plugins, and then we go under All, and you type in the word modeling into the search tab up here, this is the modeling tools editing mode. This is live in Unreal 5. There is a modeling tools editing mode in UE4, however, they are very different. The UE5 version is a little bit more feature rich and feature complete. The UE4 version is a little bit older and has been replaced. I do not recommend students who are new to use this right away. It is a little scary, and it is a little bit difficult to work with. If you are confident in your modeling skills, what this does is it turns on a poly modeling toolset for UE4 or UE5. Feel free to enable it, restart your engine, and play around with it. It will show up right here, right next to this little box over here on the right. But for now, let's go back and talk about the geometry. Geometry, or brushes, will typically show up as empty, kind of hollow boxes of information. I'm going to go ahead and let go of the box, and as you can see, as I let go of this box brush, we see that the type, as it's listed in the world outliner, and I'm going to move that a little bit in, is called a brush. Now, the way that you can explain how brushes work, especially in Unreal, is brushes are a type of spatial volume that Unreal does a certain amount of math in to denote where faces are going to be simulated. These are not polygonal objects, and they did not start life as polygons. These started life as, well, they start life as a brush, as a space inside the engine that is allowed to designate what faces exist and a variety of other things that you can do. Let me see if they still have the option over here. Give me a sec to look here real quick. They changed this thing for me, so they may have moved this already. Okay, there it is. So because this is a brush, there are very specific rules to how it operates, and ways that we can duplicate them and replicate them are different. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that ground here. I don't need that. Now, because I changed my lighting system, I have a shadow where that plane used to be. I'm going to fix that real quick. I like to do something called bumping a lot, or bumped lighting, or bumping the lighting. I'll talk about the mobility settings in the future, but if you have these ugly black lines and you really don't want to look at them, you can look away from them and they can go away sometimes, but to fix them, select your light source, which is a directional light over here in the type. Change its type, mobility, to movable, and then change it back. Excuse me. Alright. Now it's going to be a little slow for now. I'm going to go ahead and also, I'm going to delete my sphere reflection capture actor. I'll explain what that does in a future demo. I just want to get rid of it for now so that I can continue working. Alright, so with BSPs, they are, as any other object, capable of being moved, scaled, rotated, so on and so forth. The difference, however, between a BSP and any other object in this scene is that BSPs have special properties that are located inside of the geometry tab over here on the details panel. So when I'm working in BSPs, what I'll do is I'll usually make this really small. I'll make my world outliner really small. And you see that we have access to brush settings. This controls the size of the bounding box. And when that controls the size of when you control the size of the bounding box, what Epic assumes is that you want to change the bounds by which the object can be generated. Yes, we can scale a brush. But as you can see over on the left, that does not affect the size or the setting of the object as a whole. All you've done is increase the size of its bounds, and it resets to its coordinate. It resets a coordinate system that only allows it to scale in a certain direction, a certain amount of information, and a certain amount of information in a certain amount of range. That changes as you can see, I scaled it up. It changes the size of the brush, but doesn't change the size of the data inside the brush. I will demo what I showed last time. Let me go ahead and grab a texture. I'll grab starter content. I'll grab a material. And I wish I had a checker pattern in here to kind of showcase, but I'm going to grab the hex tile here, and I'm just going to apply it to a couple of sides here. And I don't know why my engine is being so slow. I might just go to there. That'll be fine. I'm not doing anything fancy in here. Alright, so one of the things that works really well is watch as we scale this up. You see that the texture also gets bigger. That might not be what we want. Something that you can do that is really interesting in the difference between the texturing on an object. Let me actually bring in a cube for an example. A little tiny baby cube here. We'll have this floating so we can tell them apart. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on this box, and I'm going to go ahead and browse to this texture so I can apply it. Now the behavior is going to be the same. You see that the texture gets bigger as the box gets bigger. So I'm using the scale tool. Now watch what happens if I'm working with a brush and I do the same, but instead of changing the size of the box brush by scaling it, I'm going to change the X, Y, and Z. So let's do 500, by 500 by 500. Notice how despite it being bigger, the texture scale didn't actually change. The little cube or little hexagons on the face of this mesh didn't actually become any different. What happens with brushes is if you scale them in the brush settings, they become fundamentally larger and require they become not necessarily larger, but what happens is the brush recalculates the size of the face and allows you to create almost an infinitely large asset. Let me do 1,000 in here as well. I'm actually going to set this to like 200. There we go. To make it nice and thin. You see that even though we're scaling that up, in comparison, let's say we bring this box over here and I'm going to put it right next to it. I'm going to press End to put it on the ground. I'm going to hit R to scale, and then I'm just going to scale up. Does everybody see the difference between how it works on the brush versus how it works on a polygon? This is why brushes are predominantly used for what we want to do today, which is gray boxing. Gray boxing, or our grand space, don't be intimidated by the name, is really about using brushes. I generally don't scale them, but using brushes to create large regions of play space so that I can create a game that I want to like prototype very quickly. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick example of that now. So let's say, what am I going to do? I want to make a central piece so that I can build something. So let me go ahead and look and see what we have. I'm going to look at my props and see what we have for our props. And we're just going to use some placeholders here. It looks like we don't have a ton of props, and that's fine. Let me go ahead and grab the table. And since I have the third person character in here, I'm going to go ahead and grab the third person character mesh. Oh, that's the third person actual mesh, not the third person blueprints. Let me make sure I can find my third person character here. Oh, there's a mannequin right there. So just like I showed, you don't have to actually import the character, or you don't actually have to import the UI for mannequin mobile. If you are using the third person character, you can just go ahead and import a character that you'd like. Alright, so I'm just going to scale this, I'm going to scale this up so that I can get a good reference for size. So right now I'm just kind of bumping up the size of something. So I want to make like a, I'm going to make like a kind of a larger fountain. So that's 3.5, set this to 3.5. And this can be our pretend fountain. This can be the fountain. Oh, got my fingers on the wrong hotkeys. I'm just gonna set this up somewhere, so this will be fine. I'll set that up right there. I'll set my character up over here. I'll make sure he's facing in the direction that I want him to be facing in. And now I'm just going to use BSPs to kind of make something fun. Let's see. I'm just gonna go ahead and grab a geometry BSPs again, and I'm just going to bring in a box. And I don't like to scale boxes that are BSPs. I almost immediately will run over here, and then I'll set values that I think are going to be useful for me. So X is forward and back. So if I type in like 1,000, that's 1,000 centimeters. Z is up. That's the thing you have to remember. Use the system that you have over here on the bottom left. You see this, and if you don't see this, you may have accidentally hit G, which is called game mode. This allows you to take cleaner screenshots. That turns off all the icons essentially in the engine. Go ahead and press G. It'll turn it back on. But let's say I wanted to make, I don't know, I'm gonna move this up here. Let's see what I want to do. Now I'm not going to talk about pivots. I'm not going to talk about setting up pivots. But generally speaking, what I would do if I was going to build something larger and do it fast is I would set up my pivots so that I could scale from a very specific point. This is scaling from the center So I would do something like, I don't know, select that. Make sure I'm selecting the right thing here. See, that's not precise. I gotta get closer. Good enough. So what that does is kind of puts that in a position where I can work with. You don't have to do that. That's just kind of what I do, and then I'm gonna make like a duplicate of that so I can work with it later. But that's just kind of what I do as when I'm doing a level design or something. You can just leave it as standard and not worry about it. Let's see. Let me do something fun here. Let's do I don't know 15,000. Oh, it's in the wrong direction. Sorry, I was talking about doing things correctly and I set that in the wrong direction. Let's go in the z-axis, so we'll do that 15,000. Let me get a good look. That's way too tall for my purposes. Let's see where we're at here. And sometimes it's about punching in some numbers to see what you get here. So let's go ahead and scale this down. Let's do 2,500, and that's going to scale it down as well. Yeah, that's fine. And then in the X direction, I'll do do I want to go? No, you know what? Let's do it this way. Let's see. Oh, I should probably explain that. So for those of you guys who are looking to be a little bit more dynamic in the creation, if you mouse over the numbers, you'll get a side arrow bar. If you guys can see that. And that lets you kind of create dynamically right out of the box. So you don't have to punch in numbers. You can just kind of guess to what you really want. And then once you get something that you want, we can go ahead and put that down. I'm going to go ahead and shove it over here. I'm going to push that out here. And let's say I'm going to make like something like, I don't know, it's a little bit too far for my character, but let's go ahead and put that there. Let's do some other fun stuff. Let's do a box. Let's scale this up. Do 500 by 500 by 500. I'm going to end to pound that down to the ground. And I'm probably just going to mate this up to the wall here. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and add a stair. Why not? Okay, let's increase the step height. It doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, we're just kind of playing around to make sure we're getting what we want here. We'll set this to 500 as well because that's the width of the box. And then we will see if we can increase the length here. And move that over here. I want to hit play real quick. So the stairs are a little bit too chunky for our little guy. That's okay. You can always add more. Actually, let's not add more. We don't need more. We need let's make sure that the step height is going to line up with the thing there. What I want to do here, adding more steps might be the right play here. Let me just make sure this is actually modulated. Okay, that'll be fine. What I think I'm going to end up having to do is, because the steps are so big, we'll just add a bunch more steps. We'll reduce the steps. We'll reduce the step height. so that our character has no problem going over. This is where it becomes really important to have a little reference guy so you can see what's going on. So you can see those stairs are very, very big for him. We can go ahead and kind of manipulate the stairs to get something a little bit more like what we want. So let's increase the number of steps here. That's fine. You see that we can do that. We can just increase the number of steps and then reduce the step height. Slick. I'm going to hold down Alt and I'm going to copy that. Let's go ahead and move this bad boy. And I'm just going to rotate that 90 degrees. This is kind of the simple stuff that you would probably expect to be making, especially in a first class. The width is not exactly what I want it to be. I just scaled it a little bit too aggressively. So I'm going to set that to 500 and then we'll kind of eyeball it and then we'll put it into position. I held down shift there just to kind of get that going. Alright, cool. That works. Let's go ahead and make another one of these. I'm going to go ahead and alt drag that off so I can get an idea of what I want to do. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. What's my time? I'm doing good time. Okay. Move this over. You know what? I'm going to do something fun. Let's go ahead and give that a 10-degree off. So what I did was I moved it only about 10 degrees. Let's undo that so we can see it. Sorry. There you go. And I'm also going to do that with Alt selected so that I have two pieces here. And that gives me kind of a subtle turn. Where do I want that midsection? The nice thing about BSPs is you can just kind of slam them together and they just work out of the box. There's no reason for you to worry about whether or not there's, oh no, Mr. Figueroa, they're overlapping. In games, it doesn't really matter because these are not going to be used for final. These are just going to be used to designate like a gameplay area. Let's add another 10 degrees to that to make the turn a little bit more aggressive. Yeah, that works. We'll move that that way. Cool. Now if we want to keep that wall together, we can select both of those both those brushes. And I'm going to rename this brush so that I can find them later. Pressing F2 will bring up the name change in the world outliner. Now I'm going to select wall 1 and wall 2 and hit Control G to group them. Now that they're grouped, they will move together. Cool. Let me get an idea of where everything is. I played to see what I can see. So it's getting we're getting a little bit too big here. So let me go ahead and bring this in a little bit. Okay. I'm going to grab another copy of this guy here. Bring this over. And I'm just going to shove that into that. Play real quick. Still getting a little bit too big, so I'm just going to move this over a little bit. I'm going to select both of these. Just going to move them in. To play. Yeah, that's about what I want. Cool, cool. All right. Let's go ahead and move everything just a smidge this way. So again, when you're gray boxing, and I don't have a map, I'm not looking at anything, which kind of make things a little bit harder. It's very difficult to kind of discern where things are supposed to be when you don't have the ability to look at a map, but that's fine. Like, the whole point of this assignment is for you guys to play around with these tools and to have an opportunity to play around with some of the stuff that you can see. I'm going to grab one more wall over here. I'm going to move this over here. Let's have an alleyway going that way. make sure the character can see it from starting point. Where's the character start? Move this down a little bit so that I can see a little bit more of the sky. Cool. Let me grab a new fresh box here. And I'm going to just scale this up. Let's do 500 by 500. And then this is going to be real tall. You know what? Maybe I'll double that. 1,000 and 1,000. Oh, missed a 0. There we go. That's something like more what I want. And what I'll typically do is I'll get into a position where I think is going to look good gameplay-wise, and just go ahead and shove that over there, and then we'll just kind of manipulate where that's supposed to be. See, now this stair is getting a little too long. No big deal. We can go ahead and shorten the length of that stair, because that's just what you can do. And then we can modulate the height to get something a little more comfortable. There we go. Hitting escape will automatically change, and we can reduce the number of steps because the level's getting a little bit big, but no big deal. Let me get a look at what I can see here. Cool, that looks great. I'm gonna do a box cut in here. Might as well. Okay, so where is this? This goes to about right here. So let's do something fun with that. I'm going to go ahead and look at this from the... Let's see, that's the right side. Look at this from the back. And let's try to line up this space with the top of the stairs. Oh, we can't see the X in that, but we can see the Y and the Z. I'm just going to scale it like randomly. Let's do 400 by 400. Oh, I moved the height a little bit more than I wanted to. Again, we can always just set up a reference, so that's going to be my reference here. I'm just going to put this just kind of in the middle. This stuff is moving a little bit too far away. I'm going to move this out a little bit more. Oh, didn't grab everything. There we go. What does that end up with everything? And this is where it becomes important to kind of be able to have some flexibility and kind of modulate things. So I've got this cool box here. Let's say I want my character to go in here. I'm going to go ahead and go down to the... Am I in the correct details panel? Yes, I am. I'm going to go ahead and change my brush type of this box right here to subtractive. Now that's not nearly big enough. So this is one of those things where if a box brush is subtractive, I feel safer scaling it because that way I'm not going to be worried about what's happening inside of here. Let's go ahead and play and see what that looks like. Okay, so now we just need to create a ground that kind of goes over here. I'm just going to do that. Again, this is just rapid prototyping. This is just kind of creating kind of a funsy level. Find out the width of this. 1,000. So let's do 1,000 by 1,000. So that should line it up somewhat. Cool, that does. Alright, so we've been using a lot of the kind of hand placements and just kind of guessing where things are. One of the things that you can do with blueprint brushes or with BSPs is you can click on this button up here to activate your brush editing mode. Check this out. This is a little bit more advanced. I kind of was holding off on this, but as you can see, we have the ability to do things like move individual faces. I'm going to tell you right now that editing brushes should be done last once you have established the overall size. Once you start editing brushes manually using these tools right here, and if you're interested in these tools, Go to the documentation. It will teach you about the tools, but because we're not going to be doing a lot of heavy modeling in the second week, we're not really going to do a lot of modeling at all, but you guys should at least know these tools exist. Check out the documentation. Give it a good read. But this is a good way to do some very basic brush editing so that you can say, if I don't want to spend too much time, let's see if I can select this face. Give me my face. Oh, give me the face that I want. Thank you. There we go. Instead of having to worry about whether or not it's perfect, it is perfect by default. Cool. So again, this goes a lot faster when you have the opportunity to just kind of sit and play around with it. So right now, excuse me, talking a lot makes me cough. I apologize. The last thing I want to talk about, for those of you guys who are not familiar with it, is hollowness. Personally, if I'm going to be making an inside building, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something like this. If I'm going to be making a building inside, let's make sure I'm in place mode here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make 4 walls and a ceiling. I'm not going to want to... Actually, I don't have to do that. I'm not going to want to do the thing that I usually... I try to deter students away from kind of ballparking it and using the hollow mode. I think the hollow mode is kind of a trap when it comes to creating interior spaces. So if I'm going to make an inside space, I'll do that, and then I'll do this. Did I select another one? Yes, I did. It just didn't make it. Select the brush editing tool. Just grab that face, pull it out. There you go. Now we have an inside scene. Cool. That's what I typically like to do. I don't like to hollow out a box to make it, but let's go ahead and go back to this panel and let me show you how that's done. If we have a box, and I'm going to set this up fairly large, let's do 2000 by 2000 by 2000. And I'm going to put another box inside of it here. Let me go ahead and bring that over here. And let's pretend that this is like a door. So let's do 600 centimeters on C. And since I'm just going to be using this as a cutout, I don't care if the texture is stretched, so I'm just going to manually kind of set that up. And I'm going to make sure that this is set to subtractive. Cool. Okay. If we select the original box and we scroll down to its settings, we have the ability to set hollow. Watch what happens. This kind of scares me. Mostly because now you can't edit these walls. You have to get it right before you do your cut. The cut being creating this door. It still works. Let's play from here. This still works. And because we have control over our large box, we have a new ability to control wall thickness. So if we add some thickness, add more thickness. Oh, too much thickness. We need to select the other brush and make it bigger because we're not actually properly cutting inside of the building. Do you see kind of how this gets weird? It adds too much wall thickness to the bottom to where it creates kind of like a weird floor. The fix to that technically is to move things down. And then we have stuff under the map. But you can see that this has a thicker wall now, and Do you guys see why I don't like hollowness? Hollowness can be a little bit weird. I don't really often use hollowness unless I specifically am trying to be in a scenario where I need to cut out uh, from a hollow box to make an interior. So like if it's not someplace that the player is going to be inside, if the interior of the box is something that I'm going to stick another item or someplace that the character can look into, I will use hollowness. But if I'm making a building that the player is going to be able to walk into, and I want to be able to go back and say, hey, this building needs to be larger. Oh no, okay, cool. Check this out. I can just extend these out and hey, now suddenly we have a larger building. Fancy that. Look at that. It's easy to make a bigger building. This, once you start scaling here, and once you start editing, and once you start expanding things like so, you start running into some jank. It gets very strange as to what it wants to do and what it won't do. Does everybody see how I have to move both walls? Let me get out of that brush mode. So yeah, it does work, but I am not a super huge fan of that. All right. So as you guys can see, this is kind of the basics of what I'm expecting from you guys in the first class. This is nothing more than just some very quick laying out. This is getting happy, getting comfortable. This is week 2. I'm not expecting you guys to be wizards at this. This is not designed to crush your souls. This should be fun. This should be easy. And if you feel enticed to, after the fact, you should go into your content drawer and say maybe find... I personally have a collection of textures that I use. Let me go ahead and... Where do I have mine? I'm going to go ahead and open the content folder here. Now you guys won't get these. This is for the advanced students. But I'm going to go ahead and open up the Explorer because this is going to open up the thing here. And I'm in the content browser and I'm just going to... So I have the ability to use something called prototype colors here. And I'm just going to add some color to this. Come on. Oh, I added it in the wrong spot. I'm going to dock this for now so I can see it. Ah, those stairs are going to be ugly. We can select that whole thing. See if we can apply it. Nope. Let's go ahead and select all the surfaces. So one of the nice things about BSPs is that you can select all adjacent surfaces, which selects the entire thing. Come on, apply, por favor. There we go. This can be orange here. And the thing is, it applies color per face. Let's select that. Select all adjacent surfaces. Cool. Orange is usually what I use to designate what where players can go, and white designates things like boundary boxes for me. Oh, let's go ahead and kill the content browser so we can see a little bit better. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my engine scalability back to Epic. So you can see that we've kind of created something fairly large. You could call this a grand space if you like. Let's do something a little bit extra. I still want to do the Maya workflow here. Go ahead. Yeah, a lot of this is more to build. A lot of this is to build the confidence, especially the new people, and get you guys working in the engine and get you guys comfortable with doing just everything, right? Just placing things, moving things, editing things, We'll talk about solving this issue next week. But this kind of, I mean, this works. Why do you slow down just randomly? That's weird. Leave it on high. Get some speed back. No, for some reason well, it's probably because I'm recording and streaming at the same time, so it gets a little unhappy. So, in the interest of time, because it's almost noon here, and I've talked my way through this. Now, this is just kind of like a small corner of something that would be a much, much larger level. And it took me about 30 minutes to make this after talking about all the other stuff. I'm a lot faster than you guys. This is gonna be the way that it is. You'll get used to it. This is absolutely fine for kind of your first larger space. Nothing needs to be incredible. Nothing needs to be... Let me change my scalability here so I can get more speed back. It doesn't need to be incredible. It doesn't need to be large. You just need to think about how you want to play around with the space. And the goal of the second assignment isn't to be like, well, now you guys are level designers. That's not the point. The goal of this assignment is to reinforce what we did in the first class with the starter content and the architecture and the props. Like, this is all well and good, but this is a step above that. This might be rudimentary for some of the folks who have experience in the engine, but just kind of stick with me. It should be fine. As we move into things like materials and blueprints, it'll scale up exponentially. But these two first assignments are designed to make sure that people have a pretty good idea of how to work. Now, I'm not going to, in the interest of time, because it's almost noon, I'm not going to do a full Maya thing, because setting up in Maya and then exporting and importing into UE4, UE5 takes about, to lecture it takes about half an hour just to talk you guys through the setup to make sure that everything works and exporting an FBX. If you need to figure out how to do that, let me bring this up here. And you know what? Let me add it to the itinerary for Monday so I can show how it's done. There is a walkthrough guide. Is that showing on my stream here? Yes, it is. There is a walkthrough guide already in the documentation. It's called the FBX Static Mesh Pipeline. Now, there is an FBX Static Mesh Pipeline for Maya. Let me bring that up. Excuse me. That specifically talks about how Maya works. This is the best practices section, which talks about how you can get your static meshes out of Maya into UE4 or UE5 as well. As you can see, they're using 3D Max. I think it's 3D Max they're using in this demo. But I'll go ahead and do a demo on this in the future to make sure that if you have your own custom mesh, you can. I'm not obligating you guys to use custom meshes for this first assignment, but if the advanced students don't sneak into this lecture, I'm going to keep going. So let's do that. So let's say you want to import an object. How did I explain at the very beginning that everything comes into the engine? Through the add button right here. This adds new content. Let's go ahead and clean up our folder structure here because I don't want to deal with this too much. I'm going to right click the content folder, right click the gray space, click new folder, imported SM. So I'm going to call this imported static mesh. And I use this program right here. I strongly recommend Mac users, you have something similar. I forget what it's called. PC users, you'll have something called everything. What it does is after it indexes all of the files on your system, it'll let you find literally everything. Everything. It will let you find absolutely everything on your computer as long as you can remember a name. So for example, I have a pillar that I use for a reference. It looks like it's part of a project. It looks like it's part of project 2. This project 2 is no longer part of this class, but I'm going to go ahead and find it. The nice thing about this is you can go ahead and open the paths, and then it takes you directly to it. So I have my folder here. Whoops, I didn't mean to close on Epic here. Let's go ahead and just hit add. Where's the geometry stuff? It's right here. Import asset. Import to game. Now, you can drag and drop. Sometimes. These are FBXs. OBJs will probably work the same way. Let's see if this will work. It looks like it's going to allow me. If you get, I'll show it both ways. So you saw that I drag and dropped, and it automatically opened up. We have the ability to set skeletal mesh. We have the ability to set transforms. I will talk about this more in a future demo, but for this particular case, I'm not going to spend too much time editing any of this. I am just going to go ahead and import all. Okay, it comes with some shaders, it looks like. We'll give it a sec to kind of import. It's kind of doing its thing here. Let's go ahead and see if we can open it. And there it is. In the static mesh browser, it looks like it's already loaded in. And it looks like it has some surfaces applied to it already. This is broken up into elements. I'll show that in the future as well. But if I drag this out into the scene, sorry, it's facing forward. I'm going to find this color by selecting it. Cool. And I'm just going to apply that color to all of it. There we go. For those of you guys who are like, what did he just do? One of the secret moves, one of the power moves that you can do is you can have objects selected in the... I docked the content browser. You can have objects selected in the content browser, and that's a magical selection that exists only in the content browser. Anything selected in the viewport, however, is different than objects selected in the content browser. So if you have something selected, like this, and you click a button, this button used to be labeled a little bit more obviously in UE4, but this is use. What it does is it's pointing over to the content browser because, well, it uses the thing that is selected in the content browser. So if you see me select something and then close the content browser, that's why I'm doing it. Because predominantly I'm going to... That's bothering me. There we go. Predominantly I'm going to apply something that I think is... I'm going to select something and then apply it using the easy method of applying it. So I'll have an asset selected. Let's add this one here. And then I'll use the use button to make sure that those things are being applied properly. That's kind of just a kind of a trick move here. So you see that this is a mesh. This is now a static mesh object. If I go into wireframe mode, you see that it does have its own wireframe. It's a static mesh object. Let's go back to lit mode. And this is now appropriately saved to our game. I'm going to go ahead and close the content browser. But if you close the content browser, you can still bump it up with Control and Spacebar, which is really nice. I like that feature in UE5. If you're in UE4, sorry you don't get that. If you accidentally close your content browser, you can go ahead and open it up here. If you messed up your UI completely, go ahead and go into Load Layout under Window and open up the default editor layout. All right. Fun thing. Might as well do this. Some of you guys were asking about this because some of you guys were like, "Oh, what can I import files or stuff from Maya?" Yes, you can. I'm not obligating you to, and I'm not going to cover it this week because it's a little bit more... It's not necessarily where I want you guys to be right now, because there's a whole ass workflow for getting stuff set up for exporting into Maya, from Maya, or everybody has different modeling tools. I think a majority of you guys actually have Blender nowadays. and some of you guys with experience use Blender, please by all means seek out the documentation for your relevant program to set up the export for Unreal. I only know Maya's and I only know Max's because I've worked with both of those programs before. But let's say you're done with your quote-unquote grand space. You're happy with how it looks. Everything looks cool. This is something a little bit more advanced. If you have UE5, this is going to be easy. If you have UE4, I don't recommend it because you have to set it up. But the nice thing about it is if we go into content up here, we have something called Kixel Bridge. For those of you guys who don't have Kixel Bridge, you can download the standalone program directly from Kixel's website. It's spelled Quixel. Make an account using your Unreal account and link it. Let me go ahead and bring that up. Bring this up. Now, this class used to introduce Kixel and Megascan, or not Kixel Bridge and whatnot. Now, because it's standard in UE5, it's still important. However, this is a paid service that is free for Unreal developers. If you guys are using Unreal Engine and have the engine installed on your machine, you can register for free, and it allows you an access to a library of really awesome high-resolution materials and high-resolution objects. It is very, very nice. You can subscribe. Let me go ahead and hit subscribe. Come on. It says begin for free, but if you look down here, if you have Unreal Engine, you can sign in using your name here, and then that gives you access to the Kixel suite and the Kixel suite of programs here. UE4 folks, you'll have to actually launch the bridge. UE5 folks, you don't have to. Now again, this is a little bit further ahead than you guys are. I just covered this with the advanced class, but I might as well just show you guys, or the intermediate class. Let's go ahead and add some content. I'm going to open up Kixel Bridge. I'm going to check to see if I'm signed in. I am not signed in. Let me sign in now. Sign in with your Epic Games account. This is why I told you guys it's really important. Excuse me. Let's see if it asks for my... so yep, and it's asking for my security code here. Let me move that off. Let me move that off so I can put in my security code. Sorry about that, guys. I have 2FA on most of my stuff, so... Okay, all I did was put my security code and I'm logging into it. You'll see that this is updating up here. Now the cool thing about Megascans is it's basically an asset library for a bunch of stuff. For example, I want to grab this balcony. So let's go ahead and click on the balcony. And I like to download them first. Cool. And then once I have it downloaded, it should just kind of load into my scene here. Where did it go? There it is. Takes a second. If your machine is really fast, it will automatically just kind of show up, but sometimes it takes a second. I'm holding down Shift to move. It's a little too high. Sorry about that, guys. I'll move it down so that the player can actually see it. And I'll turn on epic scalability here. I'm doing a lot of right-click play from here. If you right-click a portion of the ground and then play from here, you literally play from here even though you have player start. Check that out. You have access to a library of, I think it's 15,000 individual assets, and you can essentially build anything that you want and import high-resolution meshes. This is how they made Valley of the Ancients. This is how Kixel makes a lot of demos. For those of you guys who are interested in speed level design, you'll see it in the intermediate class. But those of you folks who are interested in learning how to use Megascans, definitely go check out the Kixel page on YouTube. They do a lot of really interesting walkthroughs for how to use their technology, and now that it's integrated in UE5, it's essentially a 15,000 strong asset library that allows us to build just about anything that we want. And that's inherently the power in using things like Kixel Bridge. And they have a ton of stuff. Let's go ahead and open this up and see what other stuff that they have. For example, if you go into the tutorial section, they have a bunch of stuff that you can use. Like the sci-fi landscape, for example, has a ton of individualized assets that you can bring in, including giant rocks, boulders, huge Icelandic chunks of... You see kind of what's there. Everything that is seen here, you can actually go to the video and watch how they built it. If this looks like Blood Gulch, it's because it is. Halo fans, you might want to check that out. That doesn't really get talked about until the very end, especially because this is not plug and play. It's not, oh, I'm going to bring in all these assets and it's going to look like this. I'm going to bring these assets in. I'm going to make custom overlays. I'm going to make a custom shader. I'm going to make custom materials. I'm going to make a custom ground. There's a lot of stuff that goes into making these things look great. It's really obvious when you're using just Megascans to make everything, but it looks really, really good. But in order to make it special, you want to have Megascans. This is getting a little bit too advanced for probably some of the beginners, but just recognize that there's a bigger world than just cute little blocks inside of UE4. I just wanted to show you guys that stuff like this is available so that you can play around with it if you feel enticed to. Let me go down to low here. All right. Do I have any of my advanced students in here? I don't. A secret is if you're going to Alt-Tab out of UE4, UE5, setting the viewport to an orthographic view, like top view, gives you a lot of performance back. Do I have time? Let's open up Maya. I've got time. You guys are basically in another 2-hour class. Oh no. Let's see if I can verify my license here. Sorry, let me go back to recording here. Good. So hop back in ugliness. So this is just a solid box here. If we grab another box, so I'm gonna go ahead and grab. Let me go and place actors panel here. I'm gonna grab geometry because it's not gonna work unless you use brushes. Oops, moved too much. Now this obviously came in the scene. Now I don't care really if it's scaled improperly because whatever, right? This is just for the demo purposes. I can go ahead and cut this out by using a subtractive box. But all that does is subtract it from the actual brush mesh. If I wanted to make this box hollow, I would go into its settings, under brush settings, and turn on hollowness, which would do this. It's a neat way if the player is not going to go inside It's a neat way to do like a building with windows and whatnot. It's a neat way to just kind of fake it, right? If a player is going to go inside, I generally make it this way. Because when you're building walls or you're building buildings, part of the problem becomes scalability. If you need to change something, this is easier to change because, hey, we have pieces. You know, we can make the room smaller immediately. With this, if suddenly we discover, oh, we need to make great changes to a certain side of the room, well, that's where you need to start messing with the brush editing tools. And you can see it can be kind of hard to work with. You need to start messing with the brush editing tools. And then those only give so much of an effect, right? They only work so far. And then they still work in the orthographic views as well. So like, go to right mode. So we can still affect how things work in orthographic view and whatnot. We can cut things, we can move things around. But I'm not super worried about that right now. Just the basics right now would be fine. Yeah, hollowness is fun. It's hollowness is okay. It gives an okay result. And then the nice thing about this is that this is still texturable. So let's say this is its own custom static mesh. Well, this is supposed to be a blocker, so see? Let's walk through it again so I can kind of get it down from the whole thing. So let's make a box here. This is a box, default box. I am just going to make this big. I'm make a big box here. So I'm just going to scale it out. I'm going to make it tall. And I made this, sorry, I made it with a texture selected. If you make a BSP with a texture selected, it automatically applies a texture. Whoops. Okay. Let me deselect that. There we go. Let's go ahead and drag another box in here. All right. So on the box that we're going to use to cut a hole, this one should be set to subtractive because we're going to subtract the hole from the box. We can deselect the little box and select our big box here. Yep. And we can make the big box hollow. I'm recording this part, by the way, just in case. Sorry. I'm going to have to edit this video to cut out a chunk of me trying to install Maya, but yeah, that's pretty straightforward. I personally don't like doing it that way, but you know what? That just kind of, you know, it works. Yeah, to each their own. It becomes more important later if you have to make edits, but it's not that big of a deal. Let me just save everything here while I still can.